Right, so going forward, we will structure these briefings around a bit more of a theme, so that the two kind of in-depth, slightly more in-depth sections play into the same theme. So today I'll run through the platform update, so what's been happening in the month of March. And then we're looking at how almost social interplays with the wider media mix. So not just how we operate in isolation, but how we work together with ATL. So I'm going to be looking at it mainly from the ATL perspective, slightly more from a creative and content perspective, and then Callum will go into looking at the effectiveness of social and TV and how they interplay. But I will kick us off with the ever so fun platform updates. So starting off with Facebook. Or not. Who knows? Okay. There we go. Starting off with Facebook. So I'm not sure how many of you have read Mark Zuckerberg's new vision for Facebook. So very similarly, last year when he was talking about this idea of meaningful interactions and, you know, Facebook being for friends and family, right? He's recently released a new piece on the importance of privacy, which is, yes, incredibly timely considering what Facebook's been going through over the last few months. But in the vision, he basically outlines how he sees messaging being the future of social networking, which you already knew. He's talking about the integration of WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook, and as a messaging platform. And he's talking about how people currently, Facebook and Instagram, almost serve as this digital town square, his words, not mine, and how he wants to move to a space where Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp serve as a digital living room for people. So basically trying to cater all of these platforms towards much smaller groups and have much more, I guess, you know, more private interactions within those groups. So messaging, as we knew, is going to be huge over the next couple of years. Facebook will absolutely be driving that. But have a read over the release. It's super interesting how he words everything, especially knowing what Facebook has been going through, and almost uses that as a bit of a PR stunt or an opportunity to make it look like this is what Facebook has been doing all along, and this has been the larger vision. But have a read over. It's quite important to know, I guess, in the long term side of things. Slightly more micro stuff. So Facebook have replaced their relevance score. So the score that was meant to be looking at how well your content or how relevant your content is to your audience, replaced it with 3 different new metrics that will be looking at more quality, engagement, and conversions. So whereas we used to have this one relevance score that told, you know, your content is quite relevant, which to be fair always was a relatively shoddy and vague metric to begin with, and something that we should not have based much of an analysis on. But it will now be replaced with a quality metric, which is looking at the quality of your content against your competitors, an engagement metric, so looking at the expected engagement rate that your content will have against the engagement rate of your competitors, and looking at conversion rate, so looking at the expected conversion rate your content will have against your competitors and those who are optimizing for the same result and catering content for the same audience. So essentially just a slightly more granular way of looking at how effective your content is. And the third one, and the third, okay, great, feature is on Messenger. So potentially interesting for community management. So very similarly as you can on WhatsApp, you can now quote and reply on Facebook Messenger as well. So if there are complainers who, you know, write loads of different single responses, it's now easy to go back to them and say, you know, your first question and basically reply to that first, and then go to the second question, reply to that first. A relatively small change, but potentially useful. Moving on to Instagram. In-app checkout, as we all know, exciting times. So we can buy stuff quicker and directly on Instagram, so we don't even have to leave the platform, which is great. But wouldn't expect to see our massive lift in conversions quite yet. So clients and brands, yes, they will be super interested in this, and yes, they will think that it's revolutionary, and yes, it is a nice mechanism to have on the platform, but it still doesn't make your product any more desirable. So if people didn't want to buy your product in the first place, the release of Instagram checkout won't help that. You'll need just as much time to prime your audience to make sure that they actually know what your product is and decide whether they want to buy it or not. So yes, the mechanic is useful, it's simple, it's super easy to use, but no, it doesn't necessarily see a massive lift in our conversion rates. And they've also released a new ad format, which is branded content ads. So you might have seen these. They've been testing it for the last couple of months. What it essentially is super simple. It's exactly the same thing that you've seen on influencers' profiles. So those branded sponsored content posts, but now brands are able to basically boost them and use them as ads on their own profiles. So essentially just using and telling everyone that that is a branded piece of content used or done together with an influencer, a partnership, and then use it as an ad on their profile. And the third one is another, I guess, a native behavior that is being mimicked on ads. So poll stickers have launched on ads as well. So, another way to get closer to your consumers and create more engagement and real life interactions with all of the people that you want to be talking to. But quite a nice little feature. And the rest, so very excitingly, LinkedIn has rolled out 3 new targeting options. So the most interesting of these is the lookalike audiences. So much like on Facebook, you're now able to build your custom lookalike audiences, which should help us target a bit more effectively. The other 2 are much more, the targeting options are much more on the engagement or like interest side of things. So one of them uses search data from Bing, which is a search engine that no one cares about / uses. So I'm not sure how effective that will be, but the lookalike audience is definitely something that we should explore for our B2B, why not our B2C clients as well. On Snapchat, so they've been working with the UK Home Office to look at how they can basically improve the age gating on the platform. It's been horrible since up until now. We know that there's a really young audience on the platform, and brands do struggle to work with Snapchat to basically make sure that they're not targeting under 13-year-olds. Snapchat say that they do remove the profiles of people who are too young, but it's basically all incredibly loose, incredibly vague. So they're now actually working together with UK Home Office to try and put together some more restrictive measures for that. And the last one, Google+. Who remembers Google+? Yeah, me neither. But it's now officially dying. So they say they sent an email around a couple of weeks ago about how you need to download all of your content if you have any on the profile by the end of March. So you've got a couple of days to get all of those lovely shots and videos of Google+ before it totally goes down as of the beginning of April. That is platform updates, and I will take us straight into the first section, which is looking at how Above the Line plays with social. So looking at this more from a, I guess, content perspective and how we can almost supplement what is being done above the line. And more we get clients who not only use social, who do not only have social presence and almost try and drive awareness through that, but do play within a much wider marketing mix. So first, I guess we're thinking about the categories of ATL and BTLs, above the line and below the line. So when we talk about ATL, we're talking about those mass reach, awareness driving channels. So your TV, your radio, your outdoor, anything that basically plasters your message out there to as wide of an audience as possible. Whereas below the line is then something that's much more targeted. So most of the digital activities go down for that. It's direct mail. It's essentially a direct response channel to a targeted group of people. But what's interesting about the categories is that they actually date back to 1954, I believe, when Procter & Gamble, so P&G, were the first client to categorize their ad agencies based on those 2 terms. So actually, they're incredibly outdated terms. And I would hope that the advertising industry and consumers have changed quite a bit since these times. But still, we keep on using those same two terms, ATL and BTL. And also what's coming into play is the fact that, your newer channels, like social still being relatively new channel, they've blurred the line even more, because as we know, it's very easy to set up a highly targeted BTL campaign on social, but you can also do mass reach awareness driving campaigns. So when talking about ATL and BTL, I wouldn't want us to use those on a daily basis. I would always want us to look at, I guess, the people over the platforms. So we should not be looking at, we want to create you as a client, you shouldn't be looking at, I must create a TV campaign or I must create a social media campaign. But we must think about, what do our consumers want? What is the best way to reach them? So people over platforms, so not just ATL and BTL, but looking at what we actually are here to do. And because we know that advertising across different platforms just is more effective. So rather than, say, using one single platform, whether it's social, whether it's radio, whether it's outdoor, we know that once combined, they just drive much higher incremental ROI. So essentially, yes, we want to be working with clients who have several platforms in their marketing mix and several channels to put our messaging on. But that's just almost as a mindset that I want to make sure that we have, even though I'm talking about above the line being a thing and social almost supplementing that. I just want to make sure that we're not thinking the platforms only. So I wanted to go over 3 quick case studies of how social plays with above the line, so the big boys, the mass reach platforms. And I've divided them into 3 different, I guess, brand or client categories. The first one being the global giant, the cash-strapped, and the layered. So the global giant, so what defines that as a brand? So these are your big budget guys, so your global brands who most of the time have a very cross-agency mentality, so are used to working within a large group of different platforms, of different channels, and know exactly how to use all of those. An example of this that I pulled together is HSBC. So I'm sure you've seen this one. It's from their Together We Thrive campaign that was first launched in 2017, I believe, with Richard Ashcroft. And this was the TV ad that ran in 2017. And then they relaunched it last year due to the whole Brexit issue. And went with the We're Not an Island campaign, which I'm sure you've seen both on outdoor and on TV as well. So this is almost the wider awareness driving piece that they've gone with on TV, that they've then supplemented with outdoor. So I thought this was a brilliant execution of a localized, almost adding another layer to the big awareness driver. So they did your London, your Leeds, your Sheffield and Manchester across different larger cities in the UK. And how they supplemented that with social, it's almost using those different local executions and then building on those. So yes, they were running this awareness piece on the left-hand side, which is, a campaign driver, but then they also did some, much more localized things. So in the middle one was a reactive execution that they did for the Brits using the same visual. And what they understood quite well is the fact that when you plaster outdoor stuff, especially localized outdoor stuff, people do go to social to talk about it, because obviously you don't have a medium to communicate with the outdoor piece of work, but social is the most obvious way to go and talk about it. So people were retweeting, posting these outdoor ads, and HSBC were then promoting those localized pieces geo-targeted on social as well, which is a great way to add that local touch to otherwise massive broad campaign. And HSBC, I remember working with them at We Are Social back in the day, and one of their biggest objectives is to increase positive sentiment on social, because banks are known as notoriously, people hate them for all the right reasons. But they wanted to increase the positive sentiment, and a campaign like that on a very local level is incredibly effective in driving that. So that's using social as almost the local supporter and adding that, I guess, personalized edge to it. The second brand that I looked at was called what I call the cash strapped. So much leaner budgets than those big guys. They tend to be the newcomers or your fresh thinkers. Could be a charity. Essentially brands who don't have massive amounts of budgets to spend on big campaigns. And what's quite common for these guys is the fact that whereas an HSBC might be running a TV campaign for 4 months, these guys might be running it for, say, 2 weeks. So they have a short burst of above the line activity that you then need social to almost supplement. So the example I use for this, which I love, is the RNLI, the lifeboat charity, which I think it features in like a TV show now at the moment as well. But this is their campaign last year about how when you drown or when you fall into water, your immediate reaction is to fight that movement and to fight the water. But actually what you should do is to float. So not do that, but to float. And it is a full campaign raising awareness of that. And this was the TV spot that went out. It only ran for a couple of weeks because of charities, smaller budgets. They probably got that as almost a free charity thing from a media buyer. But what they did on social, which I thought was brilliant, they didn't just chop up the TV ad and use different executions of that, but actually created short form films that are driving the same flow to live messaging. And they posted these across the next 2 months. So it's almost extending that campaign and driving that awareness further on social using this almost made for social pieces. So I think it would have been an easy way out just to chop up the original TV ad and put some copy on it and make it social first. But they actually went through the effort of making it so much more effective, which is, I think it looks great. It's almost using social as the message amplifier. So if you don't have the big budgets to go for the above the line stuff, just use it as an amplifier extender. And the final one is looking at what I call layered, for the lack of a better name. So for these brands, they're usually in a very crowded market. They're trying to, there are multiple messages that they're trying to transmit, or they're trying to go for a shift in brand perception. Essentially, they are facing a really big job from a marketing angle. The example of this was the beautiful BBH campaign, Tesco Food Love Stories, which won a Cannes Lion, I believe, last year as well. So this is a campaign all about making cooking more personal, and whether you are, it doesn't matter who you are, where you are. It's all about creating those incredibly, I guess, emotional stories around cooking. And the way that they almost took that and then did the social executions was very similar. Again, they could have just chopped up those videos and posted them on social and distributed those, but they actually went through the I guess the more food porny side of things, making sure that they keep repeating all of the same elements that they actually have in the TV ad as well. So what we call these distinctive elements. So whether it's the Tesco Food Love Stories, the lockup, whether it's almost the headline for the ad, which always shows up in the first, so Mark's winning sweet potato fritters, they almost keep repeating those same things in the short form executions as they would in the TV ad. So which immediately, I guess, builds that salience and builds that recognition of, yes, I'm going to go to Tesco. It's another way to keep it, I guess, front of mind, to make sure that we're always thinking about it. So beautiful execution. They also did loads of outdoor activity as well, where they showcase the people and the personalities behind the ad. So it's just a very well thought out campaign, that bridged both above the line and below the line. So it's almost using social as the distinction builder. So bringing those distinctive elements and then using them over and over again to make sure that we are reinforcing the messages again. But those were the three, I guess, case studies, how above the line, or some of the best in class case studies, how above the line can work with social. And I'm going to give it over to Callum, who will talk a bit more about why is it so effective to use both TV and social. Do you want to?
Sweet. Cool. Thanks for that, Essie. So I wanted to take a deeper look at how social works alongside TV, because this is something that we're basically coming into quite a few times already this year. So I just want to kind of go through how they might work together and kind of some strategies for doing that. First thing I just wanted to say is that there's quite a dangerous opinion within social that social is kind of like a competitor to TV advertising. Actually, that's completely wrong. What I think Essie has shown and going to show in this is that they work so well together. It's not social stealing budget away from TV. Actually, the best thing to do is do both, and they play really complementary roles. So these 3 reasons I want to explore as to why they work so well together. So the first one is priming, second one is second screening, and the third one is incremental reach. So I'm just going to dig into each of those and then show how they work together. So the first thing is this priming effect. Look at this and try in your head to read out the colour of the text in your head. Pretty hard. Now try it on these. Read out the colour. Bit easier, maybe. So this is like an example of priming in action. So over our lives, we have been primed over and over again to look at the colour first, not the word. So that's like priming, not in an advertising sense, but that is the same mental impact that advertising seeks to influence. This is an example of priming gone wrong, or supposedly gone wrong. So the KFC advert where they used real chickens, have you seen that one? Like last year, got absolutely slated. The reason it got slated is because of that same kind of effect. So over the years, we've been primed for fast food advertising to like not focus on the actual animal. It focuses on like the end product. And when people saw this, it just like threw that all into conflict because it goes against what we've been primed. That's priming gone wrong. And I guess the argument I'm trying to make here is that social can work really well to prime TV. So when you put out stuff on social that kind of works with the TV stuff, it makes them both work so much better together. There's been a study on this just to kind of prove it. So that Facebook did a study where they kind of took 2 different approaches to priming a TV advert. So they did a TV advert that primes TV, and then they did social advertising that primes TV. And the results obviously were that when you prime TV with social, it's like way more effective than priming with TV. And it goes back to this graph that Essie showed. Advertising across multiple platforms is always better than just advertising on one. Like the combined effect is always way better. So if you're hitting people on TV and social in other ways, it's always going to be more kind of impactful than just spending all your budget on one. Second thing to talk about is second screening. Like everyone kind of talks about this in the industry, but just wanted to dig into like what exactly that means. This is a study of where attention goes during ad breaks in the UK. So when adverts come on during TV, 52.9% of the attention goes to mobile. Only 37.2% of people were actually watching the TV ads. And that kind of isn't just during TV advertising. So even when TV is on, 28% of that time is like looking at your phone. So like the phone plays a massive role when people are watching TV. And when this is happening, most of that time is spent on social. So when you look at your phone, when you're watching TV, you're usually looking at social. And within social, it's usually these apps. So Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, and Twitter. So that's where people are looking when they're watching TV, which is obviously like a really big opportunity for us to do that priming stuff again when we're layering on top. You're kind of, again, hitting from multiple angles. Another interesting point is that most TV happens in the evenings. So like all of the time during the day is like almost a dead zone for TV. So if you're hitting during social at that time, it's kind of like a different angle. So second screening, really important. Third thing that you might hear a lot in, if you work in media agencies, is this kind of incremental reach thing. So that means using Facebook to reach people that you wouldn't reach with TV. So it's like the additional people that you'll reach that won't see it on TV, reaching them through Facebook. There's a study on like who these people are, but a lot of people just don't watch TV that much. They're like light TV users. So if you want to hit them with a campaign, you can't just rely on TV, you have to rely on other channels. Nielsen did a study on this as well. There's like, it's quite significant, the amount of people who like just don't watch TV that much anymore. So you have to be layering on Facebook in order to reach them at all. And when you're kind of running analysis of campaigns, usually it's something like this. So you'll have like loads of reach on TV. You'll have some people who have seen it on both platforms. That's where their priming stuff comes in. And then you have some people who have just seen it on Facebook. And that's where you have to kind of communicate the whole message. This is what like a good analysis of how they work together would look like. So there are kind of three reasons as to why they work together. You've got this priming effect going on, second screening, and incremental reach. So like you have to use them both really. And when you do, like the combined effect is bigger than the sum of the parts. So it's kind of like a 1 + 1 = 3 thing. You would expect, there's this study, you would expect that if you use them both, you get a 22% uplift. It's like even more than that when you use them together. So like the combined effect is bigger because of that ROI stuff. Just wanted to take a little look at how creative should look, or like how you should think about creative when you're kind of working with TV stuff. So we had to think about this for a campaign we were doing for Valspa, and they were doing a big TV campaign, and our job was to kind of figure out how that plays out on social. So the strategy was around 3 different parts. So before the TV campaign was running, our job was like to prime. So we like went live a few weeks before with some smaller assets that just used the distinctive part of the advert. So the advert was around this chameleon, you might have seen it. On TV during priming, we just used that chameleon, pretty like short, snappy social videos to kind of prime people so that when they see it on TV, they will already kind of recognize it a bit. While the TV campaign's going on, it's a bit of a longer thing. So it's kind of like a social version of the TV ad, like that lifeboat stuff. It's kind of like so that when they see it on TV, they see it on their phone, it kind of works together. And then it also plays an extending role. So TV campaigns usually don't run that long, but social can like extend the impact if we keep on running stuff afterwards as well. So that's how it might work. Another interesting thing that came up in a pitch this week is around social is kind of like reverse storytelling. So whereas on TV, you've got the attention on the TV, you kind of build up to like the punchline or the kind of thing you're trying to say. On social, you kind of have to start with that because otherwise people will scroll past. So you start with the kind of like TV punchline and then introduce kind of the slower stuff. Quite interesting. Final bit just on media. Again, this graph, this will only work if we're targeting the same audiences. So it's really important to work with the media agency on what TV ads they're buying, like what audiences they're going for. How do we translate that to social targeting to try and make sure it's like the same people that we're targeting, like super important. Otherwise we don't get any of that impact. The second thing is this combined timings thing. So we really need to like be joined up in terms of when the TV ad is running, like what kind of timelines it's going for so that we can stagger our creative at the right points. And finally, really good measurement solution around this, cross-platform brand lift. It's run by Nielsen, who are like a third party away from Facebook, and they track the uplift on people who've seen the TV ad, seen the Facebook ad, and the people who've seen both, and kind of measure the uplift on that. It's a really good way to show how Facebook and TV are working together. It means we have to kind of collaborate with the media agency on doing this stuff. So that's it. Just want to go through, so the reasons that they work together is because of this priming effect, this second screening thing, and a way to get incremental reach. For creative, we should be thinking about this prime, layer, extend model. And for media, it's all around kind of combining the targeting and the timing. I think that's it. Thanks, everyone.